buy equipment from outside, they will obviously extract the pound of flesh. So it becomes very costly for you. Number two, nobody gives you latest technology. So you always get second-hand technology or the not so latest. The latest he will keep for himself. He will not like to buy.
Hello and welcome to the Honest Talk by Freak Folks. I'm Harsh Pandey. For this particular session, our guest will be Air Marshal Anil Kushla, sir, who is here with us. He's a former Vice Chief of Air Staff, Indian Air Force, and alumni of National Defense Academy, was commissioned in the fighter stream of Indian Air Force. Air officer has to his credit over 4,000 hours of accident-free flying mainly on different variant of Jaguar, MiG-21, and Kiran aircraft. He is equally experienced on both ground attack and air defense roles with specialization on maritime roles. He has been awarded three presidential awards, namely Param Vishish Seva Medal, Ati Vishish Seva Medal, Vayu Sena Medal, and has been commanded by the CAS. He was also commanded by AOC in Sea during flying training period as a cadet. While in service, he has handled Doklam operation with China and Balakot strike against Pakistan. And I believe his profile has so many things, so many glories, which I won't be able to explain in next few minutes. But I'm pretty sure during this conversation, we are going to learn a lot from him. So first of all, sir, I welcome you to in this session. Thank you so much for joining and agreeing to share your thoughts with us.
Yeah, thank you, Harsh. Thank you for inviting me. And also thank you for the kind words which you said. Actually, when you contacted me, when I heard about your talk show, and I was wondering why we named it Freak Fox, very unusual name. But then the second part I liked, Honest Talk. That portion I liked. I said, yeah, that's an honest talk. Actually, I maintain a blog, and I also given a tagline of candid and to the point. Hindi mein I said kam ki baat. So uh, honest talk. So obviously, whatever you're talking about honestly and candidly. So go ahead. And once again, thank you. Go ahead with your questions. I'll try and answer whatever questions you have. Thank you.
That's really great, sir. Thank you so much. It's our pleasure to. So, moving to the topic of today's session, which we have chosen is defense capability enhancement, air power in particular. According to reports, India has decided to manufacture fifth generation advanced medium combat aircraft on its own under the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. DRDO, Defense Research and Development Organization, and the HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, will be involved in making the fifth generation fighter jet for India. The move is a quantum leap in India's bid for high technology as it seeks to catch up with the other nation over the next decade. So my very first question to you was, or rather it's a kind of request to you, sir, please explain our viewers, what do you think how Indian Air Force fifth generation fighter jet will change air equation in South Asia?
Yeah, so you have tagged the issue of our fifth generation aircraft, which you're trying to build indigenously. That is AMCA. It is called AMCA, AMCA. It is a short form for Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft. I'll modify your question a little bit. Firstly, in two aspects. One is, you mentioned South Asia, I think. So
Yes.
South Asia, actually, generally, if you look into the thing, it includes Pakistan, India, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Maldives, and Sri Lanka. But there's a major player in this area, that is China. It doesn't include that. So I will say instead of South Asia, we'll call it in the regional dynamics, because China is a big player, and Indian generation aircraft or the capability building or whatever you call it is directly related to China as well as Pakistan. So I will modify the question to a little bit and say, okay, regional dynamics. And secondly, I will not say regional dynamics, because regional dynamics have got geopolitical connotation. It has got military connotation. It has got other capabilities in warfare which are happening, gray zone and cyber and nuclear and others. And the aircraft as a platform generally affects only the air power part. So I will say, how does it compare with the other fifth generation or other modern advanced aircraft in the region? So with that background, let me start with little bit on the AMCA program. Okay, AMCA program is a basically indigenous program. It's a continuation of Tejas, which program which we have initiated long time back in 1983, and Tejas are already now being inducted into the Indian Air Force, and it's a good aircraft. As I said, AMCA is advanced medium combat aircraft, and it is continuation of the program which we initiated about Tejas indigenous aircraft. And Tejas already has been inducted into the Indian Air Force with the one squadron of IOC configuration, then FOC configuration one squadron, then Mark 1 two squadrons 40 aircraft, and recently the contract has been signed for 83 Mark 1As. So that is 4 squadrons. And in future, plan is to induct Mark 2, about 6 squadrons, 108. So Tejas will become a mainstay of the Indian Air Force, almost 231 aircraft, about 12 squadrons. And AMCA will be follow-up of that. It will be a 5th generation aircraft. So if you can compare generation-wise, Mark 1A is considered as 4th generation, equivalent to 4th generation, and it will be a mainstay, replacing the MiG-21 fleet of the Indian Air Force. Mark 2 would be equivalent to 4.5 generation, and it will be replacement for, say, in future for Mirage 2000, MiG-29, and Jaguar squadron, which will draw down. And AMCA will be the 5th generation aircraft. At the moment, the timelines given are 2031 and 2034, and 2 Mark, that is Mark 1, AMCA, and Mark 2. And Mark 1 will be with the GE 414 engine, and Mark 2 will be hopefully with indigenous engine, that is Kaveri project. So it's a continuation of our aircraft development program as such. And the design and the AMCA, which is we are planning to make, has got all the new features, including stealth. It will be artificial intelligence enabled. It will have multi-sensor data fusion. It will have very high advanced situational awareness, a very advanced cockpit with touchscreen and 3D displays, quadruplex control systems. So you name it, it will have automatic takeoff and landing, voice command, super cruise capability, and internal carriage of weapons, and super maneuverability. So it will be a very, very advanced aircraft. So that is a project as far as AMCA is concerned. Now timelines I have said are 2031 and 34, with the first prototype flying aimed to be flown by, let's say, 24, and after the Mark 2 has flown in 22, August 22. These are a bit optimistic timelines, but I hope that we meet these timelines. Okay. Now coming to the equation in the region. Now China is already claiming to have a 5th generation aircraft in J-20, and they're also working on the project of J-31. So they are claiming, okay, but they have a good aviation industry already making large number of aircraft in quantity as well as quality is not very sure, doubtful. Their weakness at the moment is like ours is the engine technology. Engine technology of the aircraft is one thing which only a few countries have got: Russia, USA, European Union, and few of the countries, and Sweden. But it's a difficult technology to master. So China is also still struggling. We're trying to bridge the gap. So in the region, I would say China has already got, at least they're claiming that they have a 5th generation aircraft, and ours will be in future. Now, before commenting on the what comparison will take place or how will it change and all that, aircraft platform is only one capability. So, of course, it matters a lot, but there are a whole lot of other things in terms of, what sort of features, quality does it have? How many quantity do we have? Okay, then how does it mesh into our doctrine and strategy and other warfighting mechanism? Okay, what sort of combat support elements do we have, and how does it match up with that? Then how does it mesh into the network environment of air warfare, what sort of training, tactics, strategy, doctrine do we follow. So there are a whole lot of factors on which the capability of the, uh, capability of the platform is to be derived. It depends on a whole lot of factors. Okay, now as far as AMCA is concerned, so obviously the world is moving forward. Our regional players which are there, unfortunately, we have two nuclear powered adversaries, and they're also moving forward. So we need to move forward. We need to have quality wise, whenever we make it at par with the rest of the world, then quantity wise, we should have capability to build enough in numbers, and time frame should be most important. Going by the past record of Tejas project, we have been slipping a bit. I hope AMCA we put in full effort so that we don't slip on the time frames of 24, 25 first flight and induction by 31, 34, whatever is decided. Okay, indigenous capability will have a lot of advantages. The availability of technology. The biggest advantage will be we can, increase the production as and when required. And second is availability during assured availability during the times of need. And the biggest advantage is you can integrate whatever weapons or systems we want to along with it. Whereas if you get it from outside, there are a lot of restrictions on this aspect. So as I said, this will be a good aircraft, and also we'll have to merge it with our tactics, training status, strategy, doctrine, synergy with other services. So it also match the regional scenario by then, and hopefully that we will be at par with our adversaries, and we'll have our indigenous capability going. So that's how the equation will get affected in the regional power play or regional military power play. Yeah, Harsh.
Indeed, sir, you have explained very beautifully, and I think the viewers those who are watching this session, they are surely going to find this insightful. You have told many important points. Sir, one question which I have is 2020 and 2021 till now both has been a year of security challenges and highlighted need for the defense capability building. How do you visualize the threat to national security and the need for upgrading defense preparedness as a priority in spite of COVID-19 impacted economy?
Yeah, very valid question, Harsh. So basically, you have thrown in two things. One is what are the security challenges, and second thing is the time come where we give importance to spending money on military in spite of uh, other priorities and in spite of being in a pandemic crisis. Yeah. So first of all, both questions are interrelated. Firstly, the challenges, security challenges depend on two or three things. Okay, one is what sort of adversaries do we have? One. Second is what is the capability of the adversaries? Third, what is the attitude of the adversaries? So all this combined makes it into a threat perception. That is what sort of adversaries we have, what is they capable of doing. Secondly, what are the expected out of military or the defense services? It's not only war; it is deterrence to avoid war, and thereafter, if the war is thrust upon you, then to fight the war. And third is even in no war, no peace situation scenario like now, there are a whole lot of things which the military does. I will cover a little bit in detail. So that also that also makes, what sort of capability do we need? So capability also depends on these factors. The third factor on which the capability depends, capability requirement, in what sort of environment will we be operating in? That means what are the changes which are taking place in the war? So these are the three factors which determine the security challenges or what sort of capability do we need. So going by one, as far as external threats are concerned, we have two, as I said, adversaries who are nuclear part, Pakistan on one side and China on the other side. And both have shown a lot of belligerence and aggressive attitude recently. So that is a threat. And not only singly, as a collusive threat, that means both together. So that is the biggest threat. Then we have internal security issues also, where defense forces come in, military comes in big way. That is in the north we have, in the northeast we have, in the center sector, that is Red Corridor, Naxalism we have. So these also need to be tackled and handled by us. Then in the peacetime also, we have HADR, that is Human Assistance and Disaster Relief, and aid to civilian authority. So this is a task which military carries on throughout this thing. So if you see, man-made or artificial disaster situations like earthquake, floods, tsunami, fire, so many of them. Then aid to civil authorities whenever NDRF is required, that is disaster relief, the Air Force takes them, deploys them. NSG wherever is required, man-made disaster, then the NSG is taken. Diaspora we have all over. If you remember a few years back, evacuation took place in large amount by air and by sea. Then demonetization time, a whole lot of currency was flown from one place to the other. The classic example is now COVID. You've seen the news. Every day Indian Air Force and the Navy also, some ships are going to get, oxygen equipment, medical equipment, vaccines. And so these all under HATR and aid to civil authority. So to handle these also capability building is required. So now comes the next environment. So environment I already touched upon. Both the adversaries have shown belligerent attitude. Okay, and together. So we need to be ready for them. Now, third is the changes in warfare. What sort of happening? So one is it is becoming technology intensive. So whatever capability building we do, it has to be technology, has to be harnessed. Okay. Then secondly, the whole warfare is changing into words like gray zone, disruptive technology, no war, no peace, hybrid warfare. So these are not the classic warfares of yesteryears. These are all, so multi-domain comes in, land, sea, air was the erstwhile. Now it is cyber, nuclear, biological, this COVID Wuhan virus. Okay. So multi-domain, multi-domains we need to be ready with. Okay. Biological, nuclear, cyber, along with land, sea and air, of course. So this is the sort of environment we are working in. Now comes the question of second thing. There's always a debate, in the country, whether we should spend money on military muscle building or should we spend money on development, correct? So at the moment, time has come where, as I covered in the scenario, that we are already actually late. We should have spent some more money on muscle building earlier. Maybe this sort of belligerent and aggressive attitude by China wouldn't have come. But never mind, I think the time is right. I think we need to learn from this situation and spend money on the development of capability. And while this capability, as I said, multi-domain, we need to spend on platforms, weapons, combat support systems. We need to build up our capability as far as reach is concerned of the various forces, our standoff and precision, our recce capabilities, space-based mainly, electronic warfare, survivability systems, maintainability, infrastructure. We need to spend money on all these capabilities. Then we need to spend money on technology, harnessing the technology in future, hypersonics, AI, a lot of technology. I'm not going to details. Then technology doesn't, just by imbibing technology or equipment, doesn't convert it into capability. For that, we need to review our doctrine, our strategy, our tactics, our organizational structures, our concepts, the HR adaptation, the training, maintenance, logistic, the whole gambit of it. Then it gets converted into capability building. So to summarize your question, the answer would be yes, there are a lot of challenges, external and internal, and these are continuous challenges, but at the moment the times are not good as far as challenges are concerned, as also we are in the middle of pandemic, economy has slowed down, but notwithstanding that, at the moment, the need of the hour is for capability building and spend more money on military capability building, even at the cost of sub-development aspects. So that is the bottom line. Thank you, Harsh.
Indeed, sir. Again, it was a quite insightful answer from your side, and I'm sure I think it's a kind of privilege today we got to hear all those things from you. So my next question to you is, as we have seen, India has become the third largest military spender in the world after US and China, according to a Stockholm International Peace Research Institute report. This is the first time that India and China are among the top military spenders. India also continues to languish in the strategically vulnerable position of being the world's second largest arms importer, just behind Saudi Arabia. So what are your views on this?
Oh, in this question, we have brought in two aspects mainly. So first aspect you brought in is that we are come to third position as far as military spending is concerned, correct?
Yes.
after China. And second aspect you brought out is that uh, uh, we have gone into second highest importer, arms importer after Saudi Arabia. Okay, so what are the views on these? So the views on both the questions are the answer is absolutely opposite. Yes and no. So you'll be wondering why there's yes and no. So I'll take the first question first, military spending. As I covered earlier, military spending depends on various factors as I covered threats. So in our case, the threats are 2+2. So Pakistan and China, external, and internal security and HADR situation uh, or aid to civil authority is 2+2. Okay. Now this ideal condition is pandemic. They're struggling with pandemic. So that is the second front or in the second category. Okay. Then I said adversaries' capabilities. I've already touched upon. Adversaries' intentions. Now, intentions, he's made it very, very clear in the last year and a half. Okay. He's been aggressive. He's been belligerent. He's shown in Ladakh. He's shown in central sector, in the eastern sector, all over the world. And especially to India, he's been very, very aggressive in his approach. So his intentions are not correct. So before answering the question, even if the first two threats are there and adversaries' capabilities are there, if his intentions are not that aggressive, you can still afford to have lesser capability. But a wise man has said, go by the adversary's capability and not by his intentions. Why? Because the intentions can change overnight.
Correct.
Right? If he has got capability of hitting you 5 times, you build up capability to counter that. Don't say कि यार नहीं उसका attitude is okay, his friend more or less benign with me or not so hostile with me. Abhi I can afford to have capability of absorbing 3 maybe hits. No, you need to have maybe 5 hits or maybe 6 hits. That is exactly what is happening. So the wise man has said that go by the capability of the adversary and not by the intention of it. So the answer is yes, we need to spend money. Now coming to the second part, I'm very impressed with the word which you use, strategic vulnerability. Importing, and it's a dubious record, let me tell you. Saudi Arabia doesn't matter, it doesn't have industry, it doesn't need it here. It's got so much of money, he can buy it from anyone, isn't it? So he doesn't need to have an industry of his own. Why should he waste money? He's got so much of money and effort rather. He's got so much of money that he can buy latest top of the art, latest equipment from anyone. He will pay extra for the extra technology. We can't afford it, correct? So for us, it is a strategic vulnerability. Now, why strategic vulnerability? Reason is, firstly, it is costly. Whenever you buy equipment from outside, they will obviously extract the pound of flesh. So it becomes very costly for you. Number 2, nobody gives you latest technology. So you always get second-hand technology or the not so latest. Because latest he'll keep for himself. He will not like to part. And third most important is curtailed utility. When I say curtailed utility, in 2 terms. One is availability during operations or during the hostilities. Now you're reliant on the outside. He may change his ideas. He may close the tap. Now what happens to you? You stop getting spares, you stop getting weapons, you stop getting support. So you suffer. So at the time of need, whereas if it is indigenous, you have full control on your production line. And the second part of the curtailed utility is, modification or integration with your own weapons. Now, if I have an indigenous platform like Tejas or AMCA, I can, whatever weapon, my homemade weapons like Astra and all, I can integrate. Whereas others, it becomes a problem. Like, for example, we got these aircraft, Mirage 2000, MiG-29s, Jaguar, Su-30. When the upgrade comes up, you require these aircraft need to be upgraded. So again, we get bound by the manufacturer, OEM. He wants to basically have a more contract with himself. So he will always say, I will do the upgrade. You can't go with other countries. So a whole lot of restrictions come in along with us. So the utility gets curtailed. So that is what I'm trying to bring in. That is why, due to these 3 or 4 reasons, it's a strategic vulnerability. And, what comes to mind is small countries like Sweden, Brazil and all, which have got hardly any threat perception, hardly smaller countries, but they have got so advanced industry They are exporting military equipment, systems, and very advanced one and technology. And here we have such a large country, so such a good brain power, but we are struggling. So anyway, bottom line to your answer to your question, as I said, was yes, no. So the first part, yes, the time has come for military spending, and no, we should not be importing, and we should be Atmanirbhar, make in India, and we should have our own self-reliant industry.
Again, sir, you have stressed on many important parts, and I'm sure it was a very insightful answer from your side. And sir, I am very sure also about this that there's a lot more to learn from you. But today, I don't want to take too much of your time. So, moving to my last question of this session. Actually, the question I have got is, what are the challenges to India's defense modernization and Atmanirbhar? Having had a vast experience in handling this in your uniform career, what are your recommendations to foster self-reliance in defense?
Yeah. So this is obviously a question which follows from the previous 2 or 3 questions. What are the challenges? Actually, so what is happening in this indigenous defense industry and modernization program, and now the buzzwords are Make in India and Atmanirbharta. Okay. So self-reliance. We have been trying a method of leapfrog. A very simple leapfrog is that you decide that I'm going to build up this equipment or this technology I'm going to use, and you decide a timeline. Okay, by year so and so I'm going to make it. Now, when you reach that year, whatever product you make should be at par with the world. That means whatever world is making that product, it should be at par. Otherwise, no leapfrog is no meaning at all. So, and in the meantime, you procure and buy or whatever it is and keep your capability live. So unfortunately, in our case, leapfrog is not exactly working. So in this process, firstly, you decide on minimum capability that is required. And while maintaining that, you leapfrog and give a chance to your indigenous product. So we have been plagued by quantity, quality, and time slippages. So quality means the product which comes up are not at par with the where world has reached. It is much below that. So obviously, and second is the time slippages. So whatever timeline we decide, it keeps slipping and we get delayed, and the world keeps moving forward. So it's a catch-22 situation. It's a sort of a rat race. And third is quantity-wise, means your ability to produce that also is one of the disturbing factors. So to my mind, why leapfrog doesn't work is various reasons are there. I'll not go into detail, I'll just tag them. A suitable ecosystem where user, that is a military, academia, who's the think tanks and the institutions, technical institutions, R&D and industry, civil and private and DPSUs, they're all working in individual silos. There is no cohesion in them. Okay. So what happens is when the things don't work, the blame game starts. One start blaming the other start blaming the third. So there's no cohesion as such. The second is, there's no challenge. There's no private participation. So DPSUs as well as R&D organizations, there is no competition. There is no challenge. So what happens is certain amount of accountability issue comes in. Okay. Third is, sanctions. Various sanctions have had effect on us from other countries. That is also contributing factor. The second is attitude. Our attitude towards the whole thing, our priorities, our focus is maybe lacking a bit. Then budgetary support. Obviously, we talked about butter versus gun. So our concentration has been on the developmental aspects rather than on the military spending. So these are various broadly issues. I'll not go into details. So bottom line is that time has come where we maintain a minimum level of readiness, minimum level capability to thwart all the challenges which we have or the threats which we have. And while doing this, we build time and also we give leapfrogging a chance to work out. I will go one step further. This is my personal view once again. I have all these things which I've said are my personal views. We should also bid time at the moment and also rely on collective security if required. Take help from the others in meeting our challenges and give our indigenous industry a chance to leapfrog and catch up. Okay, so that is the first part of it. Coming to the recommendation part. Okay, a lot is being done by the government at the moment, but in various sections and piecemeal and various this thing. It's a good thing which is being done. My take is that we need to have an institutionalized approach. When I say institutionalized approach, one is it should be top down. There should be a top level coordinating agency or a person who coordinates all the activities of various players and stakeholders. Secondly, we should have a strategy document to guide us, give us direction. Which way do we need to go? What technologies do we need to harness? What capabilities do we need to make? And all those. And while in this document, what is answered, when also should be answered. That means the timelines. By so and so year, I should have this. By so and so year, we should have this. The timeline should be mentioned. Then also, obviously, all these things don't come cheap. We need to have monetary support. So we need to have a monetary support to this thing. So that might take. Secondly, as far as the ecosystem is concerned, as I said, user, military, R&D, industry, and academia, we should have a cohesive approach and top-driven, top-reviewed teamwork with a focus and accountability. So that is the second this thing. Third is we need to encourage competition. That means private sector needs to come in a big way. So a lot of things are being done by government this thing. FDI has been increased, if you heard, from 49% to 74% in some cases. Okay, then private sector joint ventures are being encouraged. Okay, so a lot of MSMEs are being encouraged. So we need to bring in private sector for both R&D as well as this thing. Then we should stop protectionism, that is protecting DRDO and DPSUs, their interest at the cost of private sector coming in. It should be a fair and fair competition. Then only things will improve. Then next suggestion is technology infusion. As I said, modern warfare is becoming very, very technology intensive. So we need to infuse technology. Once again, FDI will assist us. Then offset clause have been introduced. Okay, then I will go one step further. We should go invest in a lot of future technology. Hypersonics, quantum, AI, nano, robotics, swarms, drones, unmanned platforms, networking, whole lot of them. And generally, these technologies are civil military dual use. In our case, what happens is first it is developed for the civil use and then it is offshoot is taken into military use. Whereas world is moving on. What we need to do is from the beginning, we need to have an institutionalized approach towards harnessing these technologies from the beginning into military domain as well as in civil domain. We should learn from China, our adversary. Then, as far as production or the industrial capability is concerned, we need to enhance as our production capability in our DPSUs, in our private sector. So government is encouraging MSMEs, they are forming technology and defense manufacturing parks and corridors. That's a correct step. So sixth and last recommendation is government's initiatives, a whole lot of them. We need to support them. And we need to, all of us, all the stakeholders, in terms of FDI, in terms of review of defense production manuals and procedures, simplification, in terms of making rules easy to do business rules for foreign investment as well as local private sector, all the steps taken to induce technology, encouraging joint ventures, private sector, this thing coming in. Then also recently they have promulgated, negative list, import list. That means these are the items which we will procure indigenously, make it and not procure from outside. I would call it a positive list and not negative list. It's a positive step. And then transfer of technology, then budgetary clauses have been changed into the allocation of budgets where, things like rollover clause have been added. That means if the budget is not spent during that time, it doesn't lapse, it rolls over. These things take time. And secondly, good step is earmarking of the budgets for indigenous this thing. So these are all various steps which we need to support them. We need to this. So these are my 5 or 6 recommendations for boosting the Atmanirbharta or the self-reliance in the defense production. Yeah, Harsh.
Indeed, sir, you have told very important points, and I'm sure it was a kind of healthy conversation with you over the topic. Thank you so much, sir, for joining and giving your important time. We look forward to conduct more such sessions with you in future. Thank you so much, sir, for joining.
Yeah, thank you, Harsh. Thank you very much. I enjoyed recording with you.
Same here, sir. Thank you so much.
All the best. Jai Hind.
Jai
On
Hind.
the ground is where I stand. Never give up, that was always the plan. It's so cold outside. I'm alone, I'm alright. It's so cold outside. I'm alone.